Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to my channel, Master That English, where we understand, analyze, and interpret the important texts that may be part of your English curriculum. So, today's topic is something which is in continuation to the topic that we have already studied in the past, that is on Don Maurice. And today we shall be analyzing one of Don Maurice's poem, that is Bells for William Wordsworth. So, let's get on with it. Get your pens and papers ready because we are about to begin with a very new poem, which I hope will be very, very interesting and captivating for all of you. So stay tuned. All right, here we go. So, Bells for William Wordsworth. Which phase of poetry is this poem, is this particular work that we are actually going to study today? As per the studies, it is noticed that this is the early work of Don Maurice, and this work in particularly represents Don Maurice's close association with literary work. And in a way, he is also representing his alienation with the society. We have already studied about him, and we know that as a poet, Don Maurice felt a sense of alienation with the people around him, and there were many reasons for that. We are aware of those reasons. But in this poem, we will in particularly see the close association Don Maurice's have with the books that he was studying. And in obviously, when you are having an association with books, you are also having an association with the person who has written that work. And this person that he is showing his association with, or his main regard for, is a person who is very well-known person of the Romantic age. That is William Wordsworth. Wordsworth, along with Coleridge, is very well known for writing. He is the propagator of the Romantic age movement, which started off with the publication of the lyrical ballads. Hence, this is a work that will definitely provide a different perspective of the kind of literary works that were charming Don Maurice's writing inclination and the interest that he had towards works. So, without further ado, let us first have a quick reading of the poem that Don Maurice has written so that we get a good feel of what this poetry or poem is all about. So, let's begin. Bells for William Wordsworth. Today they brought me a message. Wordsworth is dead. My God, I said. My God, I can hardly believe it. Just as you like it, they answered. Take it or leave it. He had sunk into April as in the depth of a lake, leaving his eyes ajar in the house of his head. Are you sure, I said, that you haven't made a mistake? Oh no, they said, not a hope. We knew him too well. A gloomy, considering bloke on the nose of a preacher. A poet, in fact, with a charming affection for nature. Milkmaids, you know, and the shadow of clouds of the head of the land. His work is carefully studied in college still. We shall not forget nor forego it, while colleges stand. And I said, I grant you that Wordsworth lies chilly in Grasmere, and his bones are absolved and dissolved in the tears of a rain. I grant he is one of the plant and the fossil again. His flesh has gone back into soil and his eyes into stones, and the roots and shoots of a new plant push each year through the sad rotten fragment of his bones. But although each spring brings a newer death to the bones, I have seen him risen again in the crocus in spring. I have turned my ear to the wind. I have heard him speaking. I shrank from the bony sorrow in his face. Yet still I hear those pedagogic tones, droning away the snow, our old disgrace. Before we continue with the paraphrasing of the lines, it's very important to understand the significance of the title of this poem, which is Bells for William Wordsworth. What is the most important significance of bells here? Why is the word bell really used in the starting? This is quite interesting because bells represent a very, very spiritual meaning in many cultures, where in Hindu culture, this bell is symbolic or a sign of reverence to the deities. Whenever you're starting off a prayer session, you always start with a music the bell is always played to give reverence to the god, a kind of devotion to the god. And even in Christianity, bell is always represented as a respect to the dead in the Christianity. So in both the cultures, whether it is Hinduism or whether it is Christianity, there is always a kind of respect always maintained when it comes to bell. And it almost seems that bells here is represented as a tribute to William Wordsworth that the poet Dom Maurice really wishes to give. And in a way, he wants to say something. He wants to give his devotion to William Wordsworth for whatever he has done. He's represented as a God symbol here for Dom Maurice, someone who is very important to him, someone whom he really wants to pay a homage to, which is the reason why bells has been used in the starting for William Wordsworth. All right. So now let's begin with 2 lines at a time and try to explain what is the main significance of each line in these lines that we are going to study. So let me read the first 2 lines and then interpret them. Today they brought me a message. Wordsworth is dead. My God, I said. My God, I can hardly believe it. The first line, listener, if you look at it, is a line in which the poet is trying to bridge a kind of communication, a kind of contact with the reader. He is trying to build on a conversation. He is almost trying to bring you close, trying to give you a personal detail about the conversation that he had with the individuals from his very close life, or maybe from the events of his day. He wants to make you aware about something, which is hence the starting of the poem is a very definite way to build a normal conversation with the reader. He is definitely wanting to know that, to let the reader know that he really wants to interact with you. He really wants to tell you something very deep or something very, very significant that happened in the course of his day. What is this thing is stated in the very first line itself, that this is something that is in context to the death of a very well-known writer of the Romantic age, which is William Wordsworth. That's the reason why it's almost only the last name of Wordsworth is given. Wordsworth is dead, almost to signify that someone he knows, someone with whom he is familiar with, is the person who is no more now. And that is the person who has been addressed here. That is the Romantic poet William Wordsworth. In the next line, you notice that there is a constant repetition. In fact, there is a repetition twice of the word my God, my God. These are the words that are repeated twice. Hence, the repetition here is also represented of a sort of shock that the poet is experiencing, a kind of inacceptance. The poet is not able to believe that this is something that is actually happening in reality, which is the reason why he is representing his disbelief for the fact of death that has actually taken place for an individual, a person that he knew, a person that he felt was very significant in his life. He had played a very important role in his life. That person is no more, and because of which he is missing this person, and which is the reason why that refrain of the words my God, this repetition is a constant reminder of the fact that the poet here is shocked, the poet here is depressed, and he really wishes that this truth, this thing, this news may be a faulty news. He's just praying that something of that sort may happen. Okay, so now after the first 2 lines, which shows you the perspective of the poet, now we sweep a perspective of the other person who the poet got to interact with, which are the people whom he interacted with, the people that know Wordsworth. And now you notice that these people who know Wordsworth are very, very indifferent. They have a very pragmatic approach towards life, and that is the reason why they are very, very casual. They seem to be very dry. They seem to be very unaffected by this late demise of a poet, of a well-known poet. And this is the reason why they are going very, very pragmatically. They are expressing their thoughts by saying that just as you like, take it or leave it, whether you accept it or you don't accept it. This is something inevitable. And the society seemed to have accepted this truth, the inevitable truth of the fact that everybody has to leave the world one day or the other. So if it is a poor, big deal. This has to happen and this will happen. So there is no need to sit and feel bad about, oh, this person is no more. There's no point on doing this. And which is the reason why people here seem to be very cold, they seem to be very indifferent. And that is the reason why the expression seems to be very, very, very cold in a way. And it is seeming pragmatic because they do not relate with this person much now. They are just going with the flow, and they don't want to understand the deeper perspective about the person anymore. They just want to go on with life, move ahead in life, and which is the reason why they are not paying much attention now. The only thing that they can do is that now they are saying about the very aspect that he had sunk into April as into the depth of a lake, leaving his eyes ajar in the house of his head. So what has happened now is that this is the inevitable truth that they are trying to say, that now the body, this person has Wordsworth. Now this is what is telling you the spiritual significance of Wordsworth, that it is very symbolic, because April is a month which is supposed to be in Christianity, and even in England, if you look at it, where Wordsworth belonged to this place, you notice that Wordsworth had a deep affection towards nature, and April also is representative of a very spiritual month, because in the 14th century, Chaucer represents April as the time of the pilgrimage, when all people would actually go for a very good journey. And it is almost a coincidence here that the death of Wordsworth is almost falling at the same time when this pilgrimage happens. It is a spiritual, this month has a lot of spiritual significance. In fact, many poets have used this month even in its even as ironic for ironic significance, like T.S. Eliot in his Wasteland refers to April being the cruelest month. So you can see the parallel, because for one poet April is representative of spiritual significance, and over here Wordsworth's death is also being representative of a very spiritual time when someone who is very auspicious, or someone who is very, very of deep significance, is actually leaving the place. And that is what is being represented here, that this person has sunk into April. That means nature has taken him into its bounty now. It has left, the body has actually, almost like a pilgrimage, the soul has uplifted itself from the body, moved out of the body, and it has gone out into that depth of the lake. The lake here would be representative of that other world where the poet Wordsworth now cannot come back from, and which is the reason why now it has left the body. That mortal body is left behind, and that body, that isolated body now, abandoned body, is represented in the lines where you have the starting line as leaving his eyes ajar in the house of his head. So that is representing the state of the body, how the eyes remain open when you do not have the conscience, because the soul has left the body, and as a result of which, usually when a person dies, his eyes are open, because those eyes are representative of the fact that the soul has left. So his own body can see its soul drifting away into that inner bounty of nature. It is going there to that spiritual realm, and it has left the mortal body. So this is the inevitable truth that the people are representing here, of the body leaving, the soul leaving the body and moving towards the other realm that is deep within the lake, that is deep within the ocean, deep within the bounty of nature, and now there is no coming back, which is something that we need to accept. But after this very line, you notice that the poet still continues with his inacceptance towards the fact that this stalwart has died, and that is the reason why he says, "Are you sure," I said, "that you haven't made a mistake?" Which is again stating that the poet, in a way, doesn't want to accept this harsh truth. He doesn't want to accept the very fact that individuals who do so much for the society are leaving the world. He feels that such people should be immortal. He cannot accept the mortal nature of human nature, that of the harsh truth about the very fact that humans are mortal and we are all going to die. So he cannot accept this aspect. There is an emotional disconnect in the society, whereas the poet here is very, very sensitive. He is deeply affected by the death of this poet, and which is the reason why he is constantly talking about his disbelief, his surprise, his shock towards this poet leaving this place, and which is the reason why he's constantly showing his sadness, constantly representing his grief. He cannot accept this thing, and which is the reason why he's constantly wanting that reassurance from people of the fact that maybe the others around him are not sure about what they're saying. So he wants a reassurance constantly as he is getting to know about the things that are happening around about this person who has died, and which is why he's not accepting it. But then again, you notice that even when he is so emotionally affected or so emotionally disturbed, people around him are not seeming to be very affected again, because in the very next line you notice how the people are addressing to this very sensitive thought of the poet when they say that, "Oh no," they said, "not a hope, we know him too well, a gloomy considering bloke with the nose of a preacher, a poet in fact, with a charming affection for nature." And this "oh no" again over here is again representing a cold temperament. They are not ready to give a very sympathetic note. They do not want to show their sympathy for whatever has happened. They are being very, very, very practical, very pragmatic again. And that is the reason why "not a hope, we know him too well," and that is what it is. And then now they are, after giving this cold demeanor, the cold way of expressing about him, that we know that he is no more now. You need to get on with it, and you need to get over this, because, and the only thing that they can talk about this person is now they are only talking about the past memory of the person, the way in which they would see this person. And the last two lines in this particular image that you see are representing the description of the poet, what the poet looked like, his personality traits. And that is the reason why they're calling him a gloomy considering bloke with the nose of a preacher. A gloomy considering bloke. Gloomy again is a representative of sad person who is deeply, deeply again very emotional, very sensitive towards thing. And bloke again is a fellow, so he was a very, very emotional, a very sensitive fellow with the nose of a preacher. Nose is a very important word here, because nose again is symbolic of the expression of the individual. So he's saying he was a gloomy, sensitive person whose expression was like that of a preacher, a person who can talk about things with a very, very high praise. He can, just like a preacher is able to tell you deep insights about the thing about religion. Similarly, Wordsworth's expression was also like that of a preacher. The nose again is symbolic of the expression. His expression was like a preacher, someone who can elaborate, who could tell a detailed idea or aspect or insight towards things that he is talking about. And this is what Wordsworth did. And in the very last line in this particular slide, you can notice that that is what his main profession was. He was a preacher, but what sort of preacher was he? A preacher who could talk about nature, a person who could talk about the main things that were happening around nature, who could really romanticize about. That is what romanticism was all about, being able to you are able to describe about things, about the beauty of nature around you, the bounty of nature, and you're able to do that without any inhibitions. You're able to do that without any second thoughts in your mind about what the nature would seem to be as. And this is what the poet does. He explains these aspects very, very beautifully and with a lot of emotion. That is what makes the reader like his style and expression and the manner in which he is explaining things. So in this particular slide, you notice how the poet feels sensitive and how the people around him are being very, very cold. This coldness almost alludes to the modern poets. W.H. Auden has also written a poem that was dedicated to W.B. Yeats. And even in that poem, you notice that the dedication that he provided to this very well-known poet was where you can notice that people again were very cold. They were very indifferent. They were not interested about that this person has died and we should provide a little reverence to him. No, this thing was not there. And Similarly, even for Dom Maurice, he can notice that cold and indifferent attitude of the society. It's almost like society has no respect for artistic talent, especially the outsiders. And Dom Maurice can see this because he is very sensitive towards his people, people of his literary background, and he can see the contribution that they have paid. And now, as we move ahead, we will notice that in this poem, you will also get to see the contribution, the things that Wordsworth has contributed in his working style. I'm sure that you are well aware about these things, but we will notice how this poem is actually going to progress and tell us more insights and details about the things that Wordsworth has contributed as a poet. Okay, so that brings us to the next slide now. So now we notice, let's look to the next two lines, which is milkmaids, and the shadows of clouds of the land. His work is carefully studied in college still. We shall not forget nor forego it while colleges stand. Now this is what the poet Wordsworth mainly talks about. He talks about the people who are representative of nature, that is the people who are working in close proximity with nature, which are the milkmaids who are milking the cow and so close to the nature because they are able to enjoy things. They are not in that mechanical world, the industrial world that was there in the Romantic age when people were so indifferent. They were only after, like he says in one of his poems, giving and spending, always trying to work more on the money profit aspects. They are not these individuals. These individuals who are working in the field, they are very close to nature and they're enjoying nature for what it is. So he is always representing, in all of the poems that Wordsworth really writes, he is mainly representing the people who are in close proximity with nature, the farmer, the people who understand nature, the people who are even the scholar gypsy. All these individuals, they are people who are very close to nature, who are enjoying nature, and that is the reason why they are able to provide you deeper insights in just the simple language that Wordsworth expresses. And the next thing he talks about, not only are the people, the representation of the people there who are close proximity with nature, but also nature itself. That is the reason why the next thing, and the shadows of the clouds of the land, that is, he provides a very vivid description, a very detailed explanation about the elements of nature. He provides you a clear description and the detail of the things and the manner in which nature represents itself. You know how the daffodils would look like when you look at the daffodils that you can see from the distant view. You can see that. You can imagine the way in which he describes the thing. That image is left in your mind, and that is what he does. He provides a kind of image, view, perception to your mind, and that image always stays there intact with you. This is the way in which he used his poetic genius in the description and the manner and the simple way in which he described things. So this is the style that is represented in the first line. Then we move on and we notice then his work is carefully studied in college still. So this way and the manner, the simple way in which he is able to very well associate the elements of nature with such clarity. That is the reason why he's still there and we still study him in colleges today, because that is the impact that, in a way, this is what Dom Maurice is really trying to say here, is that he is immortal now. And this is to be seen by the way in which he is still important today, because even though he is dead, people have not forgotten him. So he has his name and he has his fame. And this fame is represented by the way in which people are still giving him regard. That itself shows. And then the third line in which he says, we shall not forget nor forego it while colleges stand. That means not only is he a part of the curriculum, not only is that he is just being read because he has written something significant, he has become a part of the educational foundation. He has become a foundation of the colleges because of which people want to study him. So till the time that foundation is there, till the time institutes and colleges are there where studies are going to be held, this poet will not be forgotten, because there is something significant that he is providing, that calm, that tranquil peace that one needs to have amidst nature is something Wordsworth contributed in that time, and that aspect or that learning that Wordsworth has provided can never be forgotten, because this is what education does. It helps you, it provides you enlightenment, it provides you a source of understanding things better, become more humane. And Wordsworth provided that, and that is what organizations are mainly, educational organization in particularly, are focusing on this aspect, which is what you get to see even in the poetry of Wordsworth, which is why he has become a foundation, a stalwart of colleges, a person who can never be forgotten till the time education exists. Wordsworth is going to exist. So this describes, these 3 lines are definitely showing the significance or the importance Wordsworth has even in the contemporary time. He has not been forgotten. So he is immortalized by these 3 lines, by his endeavor, whatever he has done, it has paid off. Then in the next line he says that, and I said, I grant you but Wordsworth lies in chilly Grasmere, and his bones are absolved and dissolved in the tears of the rain. I grant he is one with the plant and the fossil again. So now here again, now you notice that the poet has gradually accepted the harsh truth. Here he seems to have reconciled with the very fact that this poet is no more, which is the reason why he said, the poet here, Dom Maurice, is saying that I grant you that this person, I accept the harsh truth that yes, he is lying there in Grasmere. That's the place where he was, where Wordsworth last rites were performed. So this place has been mentioned where Wordsworth died, and he says, yes, I realize that he is there. That is the place where he died, and he is there now, and his bones are absolved and dissolved in the tears of the rain. What do we mean by the word absolved and dissolved over here? This is something which is, again, in these lines, absolved and dissolved. Dissolved is basically when you become a part, when you're, in a way, your body is degenerating and becoming a part of something else. And absolved also means to, in a way, again, this is a spiritual realm in which all your body is getting cleansed, because slowly and gradually what is happening is that it is getting, because of the dissolving of the body, the degeneration of the body, all those sins that all the things that were there in the body are setting free. The body is making itself free from all the sediments and everything that it was composed of. So, but although the fragmentation of the body is taking place, the dissolving of the body is taking place, what is most important is the manner in which it is getting a new form, a new identity. And this new form and identity is in relation to something that Wordsworth was always associating with, and that is nature, which is the reason why all these elements are, this image is represented where his body parts are slowly and gradually becoming a part of the elements of nature, which is the reason why all these elements, you notice that the image is created here where they're saying that all the aspects, all the materials of the body are gradually going and becoming a part of the rain. Rain again has been personified here because the rain itself is weeping for the loss that has taken place, because Wordsworth was all his life doing and contributing something for nature. It was in a way promoting it. He wanted that human beings should always be amidst nature. They should be close in proximity with nature. So nature seems to be in a way feeling bad for Wordsworth, even though he's deteriorating, he's in a way dissolving and becoming a part of nature itself. But even then in this image you notice that nature is actually feeling sad, which is the reason why the rain has been represented in these lines. The very first thing in the imagery, nature imagery here, is that the rain is actually personified in a way where it seems to be feeling bad for the fact that this great poet is no more now. And the next lines that you notice is that I grant that he's one of the plant and the fossil again, which now is showing that all those elements of nature are accepting Wordsworth. They are making him a part of him, which is the reason why I grant he is one with the plant. That means all his parts, all the areas, whether all the segments of his bodies are forming or combining with different elements of nature. It is with plants, the things that are, it is providing life to new things. It is also providing a kind of fertility to many other things. That is the reason fossil is mentioned. And then he is also mentioning about the flesh, that his flesh has gone back into soil and his eyes into stones. So not only is he providing nurturation through the fossil and life to other living creatures as the plants, but his flesh has also gone back to the soil. That means he is also becoming part of the mother nature, the earth in itself that has provided a lifetime of existence to human beings. He has become a part of that nature now. He has become a part of earth, and all his other visions and all those elements have again taken new form. That means the eye that was looking at the world now has become a form in itself. It has turned itself into some other form. So this is what is mostly significant, is the transformation of Wordsworth's body. The mortal body is now becoming transformed into something, and nature is accepting it without any grievance. It is feeling sad, but it is also accepting it with open arms by distributing it to its various sources, the sources that Wordsworth has constantly been appreciating. The last line in this particular slide you notice is, and the roots and the shoots and the new life push each year. So this is what Wordsworth is doing. Although he is becoming part of new things, new areas, he is providing his contribution to various elements. What is happening is that year after year, every part of his body is slowly and gradually contributing to many things that are going to take shape. So none of his body parts are in a way getting wasted. Nature is accepting every part of him, just like he accepted every part of nature in the best way possible without any discrimination. Nature is also not discriminating with Wordsworth. The nature is actually spreading him in all the zones and all the areas wherever he can contribute and do something for it. Provide every benefit, like there is no sort of discrimination followed here, which is very significant because this is what Wordsworth did, and this is what even nature is doing. So he is praising nature. Tom Maurice is definitely appreciating the very thing, the very essence with which Wordsworth worked, and the essence with which nature is accepting him. The first line in the third slide is a continuation of the previous thought, which is through the sad, rotten fragments of his bone. Again, this is also in a continuation of the thought that his body, every portion of his body is now contributing. Every sad, rotten fragment of his bone. Why is it represented that all these things he is providing life to every from the sad, rotten fragment of his bone? Why are the bones here described as sad, rotten fragment? Because technically, as a human being, he was depressed. This is again representing the sad, rotten fragment of bones, is again representing the temperament with which Wordsworth felt and experienced about humanity, because bones again is a part of human race. And here again, you can understand that the depression that was there in Wordsworth was not in context to nature, but in context to humanity, of what it was doing to it, the manner in which human beings were exploiting nature. And this is what was depressing him. So all those depressed notions that he had are also now forcing themselves and finding new paths for themselves in which they can contribute to something that he has always wanted to contribute, and he had been contributing in his creative ventures. So this is the combined relation that nature and Wordsworth share together with each other. Now in the next line that you see over here is a very different perspective. This is almost like a spiritual perspective that is provided, because he says, but although each spring brings a new death to the bones, I have seen him risen again with the crocus in spring. I have turned my ear to the wind. I have heard him speaking. Now, what do these lines really represent? This is a biblical allusion here, because spring is the time when Lord Jesus Christ, now this is almost representative of the salvation time, when Jesus Christ rose from the dead and in a way provided salvation to his people. Similarly, in the springtime, again this is a new time that is represented over here, but although each spring brings a newer death to the bones, it brings a newer death, that means it provides new approach, a new means to cleanse yourself, a new way to find a new perspective to yourself. So Wordsworth here is almost being alluded as Jesus Christ, who every year, in every spring, his bones are degenerating and in a way contributing and doing something new for the nature. It is always doing something new, just as Jesus Christ in his attempt of resurrecting himself, the resurrection of Jesus Christ only took place because He wanted to do something for the humanity, something new for to uplift the human race. That was the new regeneration that he was providing to the human race so that it could mend the mistakes that it had committed. And Wordsworth is also contributing. Every spring, his sad body is constantly trying to reform the nature. It's trying to represent a new form of nature in a new way, just like Jesus Christ was representing. So this is very important representation over here, that Wordsworth is almost being alluded as Jesus Christ in these lines. Dom Maurice is representing the resurrection aspect in the image of the crocus. You can notice that crocus here is actually another species of daffodils. Why is he not using daffodils? Because the reason why, this is a new form again. Just like in his poetry he had daffodils, here in his new form he is representing a new species, almost like a flower. So what you notice is that the flower crocus in a way alludes to the daffodils from his poem. And just like the daffodils had covered the earth in Wordsworth's poem, similarly the sight of the crocus flower is like a reminder of his poetic genius of the dead poet. So he's in a new form now. He's like a crocus now. He's no longer the daffodils that he saw when he was writing his poetic works. He's in a new form now, and which is the reason why his representation is different. His new dead form has also represented itself in a new flower, a new representation. And this is the image of nature that you see over here. The nature imagery is so profoundly seen in this poem, where you're getting to see that definitely Wordsworth has constantly contributing. Not only is he fragmenting himself, but he's becoming a new form. He's becoming a new representation for nature itself. And that is what is getting to be seen over here in the new flower that he himself is emerging as. Just like he was seeing at the new flowers that were springing up his spirit, he himself is rising up as a new life form in this Mother Earth that he has become a part of. In the next line he says that, I have turned my ear to the wind, I have heard him speaking, I shrank from the bony sorrow of his face, yet I hear those pedagogic tones droning away the snow of our old disgrace. Now, besides providing a new representation of Wordsworth, that is through the image of the crocus, the nature is providing another aspect over here, which is seen in the next line, where you can notice that the poet is now able to, what is nature doing is that it is invoking the image of Wordsworth in the mind of the poet. This is the power or the strength that nature has, that it is even able to provide a vision to Dom Maurice of the dead poet. And this image in itself is reminding of the deeds or the lessons that Wordsworth taught in his poetry, the things that he was constantly trying to teach humanity in the way and the manner in which he was always trying to express himself. And this expression that is to be seen by Dom Maurice in his mind. He can vision the way and the manner in which Wordsworth would express himself. That is the reason why he can not only see the vision of Wordsworth, but he can also sense the expression that he had on his face while he was giving those teachings. The pedagogic tones are the teachings that he was providing. I shrank from the bony sorrow of his face. So that means he can sense the emotion or the tone with which he would express his emotions, the manner in which he felt while Wordsworth was actually writing. He can sense that tone in which he was writing and the way in which he was trying to teach humanity. The teachings were always trying to eradicate the social stigmas and the dogmas that were in a way not allowing the humanity to progress. Even in the Indian culture, Dom Maurice did notice the similar sort of social stigmas and dogmas which were not allowing the society to in a way go up, which is what Dom Maurice also feels is the old disgrace. This is what is the old disgrace for him, the thing that is not allowing the society to progress. Even for Wordsworth, he did notice that there were a lot of stigmas that were there which were not allowing the constant need of being always after materialistic things, moving after them. This was definitely droning away. This was the snow, technically, which was not allowing human race to think creatively, think progressively, and to be in calm and tranquility so that the human race could live in a humanitarian manner, which is something that nobody could do it in the right way, because nobody had the time to think about things in that way, the way Wordsworth was actually thinking in Mist of Nature. And Dom Maurice's feel that this last tone, although he is representing the note of Wordsworth, you can notice that it is not only the belief of Wordsworth, but it is also a belief of Dom Maurice himself that humanity can never do well if they are constantly looking after their rigid customs and practices. That is not the way to live life. And the only way to live life is when you are able to think creatively, productively in midst of nature without having any sort of rules and regulations for things, which is what even Dom Maurice experienced when he was in India. And this way, this poetry, even his early poem, in a way helps us to understand that perspective with which an individual needs to grow. And that can only happen with the team spirit, that is living together, understanding each other. That is what is required. And this last rites of Wordsworth that we got to see over here, the way in which the humanity the human race rather, seemed indifferent towards his death, itself is representing that humanity is cold only because they are always after something else. There are no emotions left mainly because they have nothing to think about in terms of emotions. There is something else that they are preoccupied with, which is the reason why the emotions are not moving or they are not stirring the way it did for the Romantics. The reason why they were so emotional, Wordsworth was so emotional, was because he was so close to nature and he could sense every emotion, he could sense every feeling so clearly and vividly because he gave that tranquil space to himself, which the humanity today doesn't do. So they take everything very coldly. They accept the facts. Oh, all right, if you gotta die, you gotta die one day. You gotta accept that. And you just got to live the life the way it is. You can remember a few things in the past, but you should not remember that person too much. You have to just accept it. You cannot be so cold and indifferent. This is what Dom Maurice is trying to say, that there is something called feelings. And if those feelings are not there, that alienation starts, just like that alienation started for Dom Maurice, constantly trying to remove himself from the world because he never felt associated with the world he was around when he was young. And this alienation is also to be seen in the death of Wordsworth, that the society seems indifferent towards him, indifferent towards his contribution, indifferent towards his role, even though they are studying him. They seem to be indifferent. Hence, this poem is very significant. Being his early work, it definitely does resonate, his alienation, representation of himself around his society or the cosmos in which he was living. So that calls it for this poem that we have studied. I hope you people have enjoyed it. And there is another poem that I would be interpreting again, that is Letter to My Mother. That is again a very different poem than this one, because this is a little on the literary perspective, because he was addressing Wordsworth here. But the second one is even more intriguing, because now, though that poem that we are going to study now in the coming lecture would be very personal in its tone and very interesting too. So I hope you people enjoyed the lecture. Please subscribe the channel, because I am a beginner. I'm an immature beginner who is just starting off, and I really, really hope that this channel really does well and helps as many people possible. So please subscribe to the channel, like it, give me your comments. I'm dying for the comments of what you people think about my lectures. Tell me if you feel good about it, and share it, because after all, sharing is caring. And I hope this journey keeps on moving on, and we do much better than what I rather contribute much better than what I am doing right now. So this is me, Karishma, signing off for now. I hope to come back very soon with another interpretation where we get to analyze, interpret, and understand the various texts that are going to be or maybe be a part of your English curriculum. So this is me signing off for now. Enjoy your day and happy learning. Bye-bye.